Fascinating biblical discoveries have been uncovered at ancient Shiloh. This is where Joshua divided the land between the 12 tribes, where Hannah prayed for a son, and where the tabernacle stood for 400 years.
For a very long time, the name Shiloh has carried a quiet weight. It's a short, simple name, but for the people of Israel it once meant the heart of worship. Long before Jerusalem became the center of religious life, the people gathered at Shiloh. There the tabernacle, the tent that held God's presence, stood for generations. The Ark of the Covenant rested there. The nation came to seek guidance, to offer sacrifices, and to hear from the Lord. For centuries Shiloh lay mostly forgotten. Its stones were buried beneath layers of soil and time. The stories stayed in scripture and memory, but the place itself became a site of silence. Then, in our time, archaeologists began to peel back those layers. What they found has brought Shiloh back into the conversation, not as a vague memory, but as a real, lived place where ordinary people met the holy. This is a story about dirt and prayer, about broken pots and burned bones, about a young boy hearing God's voice in the dark. It's a story that links the pages of an ancient book to the ground under our feet. To understand why Shiloh is so important, picture ancient Israel in the early days after the people entered the Promised Land. There was no permanent temple yet. The tabernacle, a specially made tent where God's presence dwelled, moved from place to place for a time. Then the people set it up at Shiloh. The whole nation came there to worship. Shiloh appears in several important Bible stories. It's where the ark stayed for many years. It's where Eli the priest served, and where the young Samuel grew up. In the Bible, Samuel hears God calling his name while he sleeps, a moment that changed his life and the life of the nation. For people who read those stories, Shiloh is not an abstract idea. It's the setting for real encounters, real decisions, and real history. When Shiloh lost its place of honor, when the ark was captured in battle and the nation fell into chaos, the site faded. The tabernacle moved. The place that once held the center of worship became a ruin. For a long time, scholars and travelers could only guess where Shiloh had stood. Recently, teams of careful archaeologists started digging at the site believed to be ancient Shiloh. Their work is methodical and slow, the kind of work that asks questions of every layer of soil. They weren't digging for headlines. They were looking for history, pottery shards, post holes, fire, blackened layers, and anything that could tell them how people lived and worshipped there. What they found surprised many people. First, they uncovered a large, level area that didn't look like ordinary housing or a market corner. This flat place seems to have been specially prepared, the kind of platform you would expect for a tent sanctuary. It's quiet evidence, but the pattern fits the idea of a tabernacle site. Nearby, in the layers that date back to the time of the judges, the archaeologists uncovered something remarkable: thousands of animal bones. Many of these bones came from kosher animals, sheep, goats, and cattle, and many bore marks of burning. That sounds simple at first, but the pattern tells a story. The bones were not scattered like refuse from a village meal. They matched the ways animals would be handled in sacrificial rites described in ancient law, careful but purposeful, with specific bones burned and others treated in certain ways. To find thousands of bones arranged like this is not just a hint. It's strong evidence that major ritual activity happened there. The kind of activity you'd expect at a national worship center where pilgrims came to offer sacrifices. Archaeology is often about small finds that carry big meaning. At Shiloh, teams found several items that point toward priestly activity. Small ceramic pieces shaped like pomegranates. Pomegranates are symbolically linked to priestly garments in the old descriptions, fragments of storage jars, and vessels that match what people used in rituals. Even a rare Egyptian scarab turned up, an object that helps date the site and shows that the place was connected to wider trade networks of the time. All of these pieces, the platform, the animal bones, the ritual pottery, the imported objects, fit together into a picture, Shiloh was not a humble farmstead. It was a place set apart, a national center where the people gathered to meet God. One of the most moving touches to this whole story is the memory of Samuel. The Bible tells how, as a child, Samuel served under the priest Eli and began to hear God's voice at night. In the quiet of the tabernacle, God called and Samuel answered. That moment, "Speak, Lord, for your servant hears," rings through centuries. It's a short line, but it's a life-changing one. Standing on the ground, where that could have happened changes how we hear the story. The place where a child was trained to listen becomes more than a memory. It becomes a lived connection to a voice that once called down the corridor of time. Some people will see these finds and say, "This only confirms what believers have always said." Others will say, "Archaeology is putting history on display." Both reactions have a point. What matters is this: when we find material traces that match the stories in ancient books, we have to pause. The match does not force anyone to faith, but it does make the conversation richer. It gives historians new details to work with. It gives people of faith fresh reason to reflect. For believers, the finds at Shiloh strengthen the sense that sacred words came out of real history. For those who study the past critically, the evidence offers new data points: where people gathered, how they behaved, and which sites mattered to ancient communities. Either way, the stones at Shiloh are no longer silent. They tell a story about worship, about leadership, and about what happens when a people try to hold presence and holiness in a place. Shiloh's history is not only about high moments. The Bible also records a painful decline. The people turned from what God had set before them. The ark was taken into battle and was captured. The tabernacle's glory faded. Scripture records judgment and sorrow. The remains on the ground show signs of destruction and abandonment, not just ritual life, but also the fragility of human institutions. This is a sober reminder: sacred places don't protect people automatically. The presence of something holy doesn't remove responsibility. Shiloh both lifts up and warns. It tells us that worship can be deep and true, but it must be joined to faithful living. Excavation is not a one-time act. Teams will keep digging, layer by layer. Each season raises new questions and gives new answers. Maybe they will find an inscription someday. Maybe more objects will turn up that sharpen the timeline. Perhaps more details about daily life at Shiloh will emerge: tools, lamps, jewelry, or notes scratched on broken pottery. Every small find gives a larger story new color. The work is slow, respectful, and patient, much like the life of faith itself. Archaeology at Shiloh is not meant only for the scholars or the curious tourist. It has a pastoral message. It invites us to remember how sacred moments are formed by people who come, who sacrifice, who listen, who prepare. It asks us to see the cost of turning away and the hope that comes when people return to what is right. If you read the ancient stories and feel a pull to listen more, to serve, to be more faithful, then Shiloh's stones have done what they were meant to do. They remind us that the past and present speak to each other. They tell us that God met people in real places, and that meeting still calls for a response. As the archaeologists gently lift another fragment from the earth, they are doing something more than filling a museum drawer. They are giving voice back to a place that once echoed with prayer. Shiloh is not only a name in an ancient book, it is a place that invites us to return, not necessarily to a building, but to a posture of listening, service, and reverence. So the question we are left with is simple: are we listening? If this story moved you, consider following the work that continues at Shiloh and other sites like it. These discoveries remind us that history, faith, and ordinary human lives are woven together in ways that still matter today.